On today's show, we discuss a piece of Cold War history right here in the Florida Everglades. Veteran Army Sergeant and Nicky Missile Base volunteer Rick Urshik is my guest. Welcome to the Enjoy the Journey Luxury Travel Show. Thank you for joining us live today to discuss HM-69 Nike Missile Base in Everglades National Park with my friend and Toastmasters mentor, Rich Urshik. I'll bring Rich on next to discuss the history of the Nike Missile Base, including Rich's Army service and as a current volunteer at the Missile Base. And stay tuned for the end of the show because I'm going to share with you my recent tour last weekend. I got some videos to show you that are fantastic. You're going to want to stick around to check that out. As always, please like this feed and share it wherever you're watching it and follow our social media. Ask questions and comments in the feed below wherever you're watching. We'll be watching all those feeds today. And we may have some trivia questions towards the end, and we'll answers go in those chat box. And as always, all of our videos from the show are found on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the Enjoy the Journey playlist of Fantastic Endeavors YouTube channel and check that out. The Enjoy the Journey Luxury Travel Show is brought to you by Fantastic Endeavors, of which I'm an owner. To support our show, please book your next vacation with us, myself, Skip Shear, or Sue Mooney if you know them. And we are a fantastic travel agency. Next, we're going to bring on my guest. Welcome, Richard Urshik, Veteran Army Sergeant and Nike Missile Base volunteer. You know, I've been getting that wrong practicing all week.
That's a hard word to pronounce, I know. Everybody thinks about the shoe, the Nike shoe.
I know. I had that slide from your presentation. And Rich, by the way, Richard is a longtime friend of mine now from Toastmasters. Oh. And I always knew about his Army service. And he has a book. He's on here to promote a book, by the way, too. And I do want to ask him about his background. But he did a presentation recently for the Key Largo Chamber of Commerce. And I guarantee we'll have some of those followers on the show today because they do follow my show. But Richard, I've always wanted to have you on the show. And I can't think of a better opportunity because you really got me excited to return to the Nike Missile Base, which I did recently. And I got to tell you, what an amazing piece of Cold War history. But first, tell us about yourself and what brought you on the show today.
All right. First, thanks, David. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, we have become friends based on Toastmasters. It's funny how that kind of links people together. I guess I should start by saying back in 1965, I was drafted into the Vietnam War. I was living in Chicago at the time, and President Johnson put out a 240,000 troop call to reinforce the troops that were going to Vietnam. So I got called, and I served for 2 years. And, you know, I look back at this, and it's such an incredible history, my own personal history. For some reason, I ended up in a Honest John rocket battalion. And that Honest John rocket was nuclear capable. And at 20 years old, I was a senior assembly specialist arming nuclear weapons. I went from being a kid on the block in Chicago, well, that's a great picture of it. I went from that to the military and gained a top secret clearance so I could arm nuclear weapons. Now, it's amazing. At the time, it didn't seem very important, but let's fast forward 55 years. In fact, there's a nice picture of the Honest John rocket.
Yes.
I'll tell you the difference between the two in a little while. But I look back over 50 years and I remember little snippets of what I did. And when I moved to Florida, and I found out that there was a Nike missile base in the Florida Everglades, I did a little bit of research, and lo and behold, I found the right people, and I volunteered to work the Nike missile site based on my history in the Army and my knowledge of nuclear weapons. So it's a pretty, it's an interesting thing. I know you just found it a week ago. It's amazing to me that everybody doesn't know it's there, but it was pretty top secret back in the Cold War. If I could just make a comment, in October of 1962, President Kennedy was advised that Russia was building nuclear weapons in Cuba. And that was the reason to put this Nike missile base, this active base in the Florida Everglades, totally in defense of that action. That's where it came from.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about next. I want you to go into detail about the history because it's critical. I'm going to show a bunch of slides that came from Rich's presentation last week. I put them more in chronological order, took some liberty there. And I'm just going to, he's not going to present the slide, but he's just going to talk about the history, what he's learned by going on the tour that I went on last weekend and by his own service in the U.S. Army. So go ahead and tell us about why this base was significant versus other Nike bases that were around the country.
Yeah, well, this Nike base, if you look at it geographically, and I invite your viewers after this presentation, you have to look at Google Earth and look at how close Cuba is to Florida. And I mean, this was a major threat back in 1962. The speech that President Kennedy gave at 7:30 at night was chilling. All Americans watched that speech, and we didn't know what to expect. That's at the time when people watching here today will remember the duck and cover drills where kids were hiding under their desks and companies and families were building bomb shelters and air raid shelters because we were on the brink of nuclear war. And it was in October of 1965 that President Kennedy was advised of this action by Russia building these weapons in Cuba. And for the next 13 days is really what substantiated the Cuban Missile Crisis. And if you have not, if anybody, again, if your viewers have not seen the movie 13 Days with Kevin Costner, I highly, highly recommend you watch that movie. I'll mention it again, 13 Days, Kevin Costner stars in it. And it tells this whole story about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And in the first 5 minutes of the movie, they mention Homestead. And that's this Homestead missile base. So this was played a significant part because it was so close to Cuba. And with regards to that weapon itself, you know, me personally, I was 17 years old at the time. If I had known that all of this defense was in the Everglades to protect us from whatever threat was coming from Cuba, basically from Russia, I wouldn't have been as concerned as I was because amazingly, the bomb that we dropped over Hiroshima during World War II was a 13 kiloton nuclear weapon. The Nike Hercules missile is 40 kiloton. That's 3 times the fire and destructive power of that weapon that we used. So we wouldn't have been as concerned if we knew all this defense was in that park.
It's amazing because I've been to Everglades National Park numerous times, and I moved here in 2004. And then my friends Leslie and Carly Adams, who have been on my show on the Christmas show I had, found out about it and told me about it. And I went up there in like 2013, 14, probably 13. And I got to the front gate, but it wasn't clear when it was open. They didn't have the warhead yet. But it's amazing how far that's come along, how well organized that tour was. Literally, there was a little bit of sign on the fence. Now it's a full-blown tour, which makes it more significant, the history of it, because people can now actually see firsthand the location of this base, which is, you know, I can make it 15 minutes from my house. I can make it to the base from Key Largo.
Yeah, the tour and the open house has gained in popularity considerably. It's been open about 8 years, I think 9 years actually. I've worked there 7. But over the years, it gets more and more visitors, and these visitors are international. We get people from all over the world that find out about this base, and it's a proud moment for me as a veteran when other veterans visit the base, and we've even had people that have worked there, people that were assigned to that base. Back in the day, there were 160 soldiers assigned to what's called A Battery. The base that we're talking about is A Battery, 2nd Battalion of the 52nd Air Defense Artillery. There were 4 batteries. The one that we're referring to in Everglades National Park is Battery A. Battery B is right close to you, David, down in Key Largo.
Yes.
There's a little bit left of it. It's not preserved like Battery A is.
No.
And batteries D and C were a little farther north in Florida. But we had some significant weaponry ready for whatever offensive action the Russians would have taken.
Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Please, any questions about Richard and his military service or about the Nike missile base, he's our expert on, so please put it in the chat and we'll feature your comment online. We'll do our best to answer your question. I built up my knowledge base too, did a lot of research before and after a tour, and Leon, my tour guide, which we'll talk about in a second when we get there, was amazing. I'm now full of Leon's knowledge, which I'm sure you are too, Richard.
Yeah.
And it is amazing. Let's go back to the history before we move on to the tours. And we're here basically to get you excited about a piece of history in your backyard. Or if you come to visit here or go on a cruise to Miami, it's literally only less than an hour from the cruise port Miami. I know a lot of you do. I book on cruises, do pre and post. And you're in Everglades National Park anyways. It literally is right by the most popular stop, Royal Palm, because that's the first major stop after the Cove Visitor Center. And we'll talk about how you get on this tour towards the end. So you want to stay tuned towards the end to hear about the significance of these tours, because it really is a special tour now that is seasonal, but still very special. Now, back to the history. We talked about the location being so significant, but I find it interesting. Wasn't the whole base in front of Everglades entrance initially when it first kind of blew up, the Cuban Missile Crisis?
The base what, David? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Weren't all the missiles just before they built a permanent structure? Weren't they all stationed just right in front of Everglades National Park entrance?
Yes, as a matter of fact, and not too many people realize that the base was actually it was started in 1962, but the construction wasn't completed until 1964. So the 160 soldiers that I mentioned to you, they lived in tents. Just imagine in Florida with the heat, the humidity, the alligators, the mosquitoes. These kids at the time, 18 and 20 years old, they didn't have anywhere to shower. They were washing and bathing in the canals. And these people had to live in some unbelievably hard times. The base was actually constructed. There were 27 buildings. I think somewhere in your slide presentation, you've got an overhead of what the base looked like back in the day. Today, there's only 3 of the barns are still there, the launching areas where the missiles were actually launched. But I think you've got a slide of the assembly building where the missile warheads were matched to the motors. And then there was also the pink building that you see, which is they call Daniel Beard Research Center today. But that was actually the administrative area and the radar area for the guidance of that missile.
Sure. I'm going to run the slides again because people join this show sometimes late. And now that you're covering the history again, and it's only about 20 slides. So you're going to see some of the things that Rich is talking about. But what's nice is the key part of the initial base is intact. And that's the Daniel Beard Research Center. The part of the tour is, outside and not inside it because it's pure research now. But it's nice that so much left behind. And I can't believe that Andrew didn't knock out the whole place.
There was some significant damage from Andrew. I'm going to mention one of the questions that we get. One of the questions we get asked most as volunteers out there. And for those of you who have not been there, this won't make as much sense as to those who have been there. But there's 3 buildings I mentioned to you. There's the launching area. There's the assembly area where the missiles are assembled. And then there's the radar area, which is 1.1 miles away from the launching site and the assembly area. And people ask, why was that pink building located so far away from the other 2? And there was only 1 or 2 people I've heard that had the correct answer in the 7 years I've worked there. The reason is that missile flew at more than 3.5 times the speed of sound. So when it took off, when the button was pushed and that missile left the launcher, if it was any closer to that pink building, it would have flown out of range before the radar could have picked it up. So they had to locate that pink building back far enough to fire that missile so the radar could pick it up in flight and then guide it into the target.
That's amazing technology. Amazing technology.
It really is. And remember, it was radar guided.
Radar guided. Wow.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is Nike, obviously it's not the shoe, but is Nike an acronym for something? Or is that just a brand they called it, whoever made it?
It's a Greek word for power.
Oh.
Yeah, Nike is a Greek word for power. A lot of people ask, particularly the younger people, does it have anything to do with the shoes? And obviously not.
No. Well, the shoes are powered. Because the Nike shoes were named after the Greek god.
Michael Jordan.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I remember Leon, and the amount of information you get in this tour is amazing. If you like history, if you like, any type of Army history, military history. But Leon, our tour guide at the time, compared it to a flash of light. I compare it to launching a toy rocket as a kid. It's not like a build like the shuttle. It's just like gone.
Yeah, well,
Amazing
remember,
power.
yeah, remember that thing flies at 3.5 times the speed of sound. And even like the Honest John rocket that I served in the Army, when the button is pushed to fire it, if you're looking at the weapon, you miss it. You don't see it. It flies so fast, it flies out of your sight immediately. You have to look at where it's going and then pick it up with your eyes, because you make this equivalent, or I used to make this equivalent. If you stand on that launch site with a quarter in your hand and you drop that quarter, by the time that quarter hits the ground, that missile is out of sight.
Wow.
That's how fast it's flying. It goes 100,000 feet. It has a range of 125 miles, and it's 3.5 times the speed of sound, Mach 3. Amazing weapon.
Amazing weaponry. Amazing weaponry. And then we're now going to transition over to the tours you're going to do. And thank you, Richard, for your background to the history. Sure. I do want to look at a comment from my friend Debbie. Debbie said she's been there twice. It's really cool. Debbie's one of my big Disney diehard fans. And cool. I've heard from a friend here in Key Largo, Suzette. So Debbie, thank you for being on the show today. Always good to see you. And thank you for the comment. And it is really cool. And Richard and I are here not just tell you about history, but we're about something that's no longer there. We're here to tell you about something that you can go see. I will warn you, the tours ended today seasonally, but they will be back in December. But the timing of the show was I want to get this out there to you guys so you could think about it and put on your to-do list. Coming next, I think, Rich, they start in December, the tours, in November, or it depends each year?
November.
They
run from November to April. And if I might add, David, we're always looking for volunteers. If there's anyone that would like to volunteer out there, there's two types of tours. There's the Ranger guided tour that you were referring to, Dave, that yes. Leon gave. And then there's the open house that I worked. That's from 10 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. But we're looking for volunteers that can come out there and talk to all of these visitors. I guarantee you it's a great rush to do that.
Well, thank you for the plug there, because it is important. And a volunteer I'll show you at the end of my video named Armand was very helpful to me and walked right up to us and very engaged us. And we all had masks on, everything safe and compliant. And he really helped kind of teach me where to go, because the open house I did before the actual tour, you actually have to do it that way. And I didn't quite know where to walk around. And the volunteers are very helpful. It's a big part of the tour. So, Rich, how did you get involved in being a volunteer out there at the Nike Missile Base?
When I heard the Nike Missile Base was there and it was in Everglades National Park, I was a volunteer at the time at Biscayne National Park.
Okay.
And I heard about the Nike Missile site, and I had national park experience. So I just contacted them at Everglades National Park, and I asked about the tour, and I wanted to go out and see that weapon myself. So I went out there, and during my basic introduction to the tour, they mentioned to me that they're looking for volunteers, just like I mentioned. I said, hey, I'd want to do that. And that's really how it started. There's a little bit of an indoctrination, and you don't have to know anything about this site to volunteer there. We'll teach you everything you need to know. There's just some basic questions and basic comments about things that you tell visitors, but it's just a lot of fun, and it's very rewarding.
So next, I'm going to play the slides of both my pictures and some of Rich's slides in the presentation for the Key Largo Chamber of Commerce last week to kind of build your vision of what's out there now. It is not just a hole in the ground. There are the buildings that were there in the 1960s that were operational till 1979, available for touring, and it's pretty impressive what is left behind for history. And it's amazing to go out there, and if you can volunteer, please volunteer, because the volunteers really make the open house tours happen. So I will start the slides, and then so Richard, what's your favorite part of working out there?
The people, getting to see the people and the excitement. Well, there's the best slide right there. When they see that missile in that barn, I mean, it takes people's breath away.
Yes, agreed.
I mean, that thing it's so impressive. And that is an actual Nike missile. That's not a replica. That was found in the backyard of a collector in Arkansas. And it was brought up here and refurbished by the local school kids. They put that thing all together. They painted it. The stencils are all accurate. It's the same color it used to be. The U.S. Army is all actual. The fonts are actual. So it's a replica. You can actually touch that thing. Look at that. That is an impressive weapon.
And I like about it, that was not there during the first time I attempted to go. And then I heard a presentation at the John Pennekamp State Park from one of the park volunteers, maybe a park ranger, and he was leading the charge to get a missile to the Nike missile base.
Yeah, right. We
And
looked all over the country.
He succeeded. He succeeded. I'm not sure if it was him or the group he was a part of. And it's so cool that Baker Aviation, that the aviation school took such care, doing an amazing job. This missile looks brand new. Like it looks like it go off right then, but it's not armed. Don't worry. Everything there is safe. And it is a nice collection. It's only one hangar, but that one hangar is chock full. And you see these pictures go by, I included a number of items from Rich's slides and my pictures of what's in that hangar. And my favorite part is how like there's a piece of the Statue of Liberty and the piece of a Statue of Liberty and Liberty Bell that were up, that the men had hung up there and had left behind. Pieces are still there. So a piece of their history is still there too, which is nice.
Yeah, everything in that barn is protected from the era. As you mentioned, the black phone that's hanging on the wall is the actual phone that hung in that barn back in 1962. That's how they communicated with the pink building, with the radar area. And it's interesting to note that soldiers served in the launch area, they served in the radar area, and they served in the assembly area. And none of those three units, the people in those units never talked to each other. They never knew what each other did. They kept those three activities separate in case anyone was captured. No one would know the whole story. So they were unique in their jobs out there.
Now, what I find unique is this base had nuclear armaments, and they had a bunker that you can't go in, but you can drive by the bunker they'd go into, and sometimes they'd sit there. And actually, they were combat ready a lot, weren't they, in their service time?
Yeah, 24 hours a day. That missile was brought out, stood up, pointed at Cuba, brought back down, brought back in the barn, and they circulated them and rotated them 24 hours a day. There was a nuclear weapon in each one of those barns. There's 3 barns, but only one of them is active today. But there were nuclear weapons there. And let me just mention this before.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is probably the most incredible part of that entire base. And if you think about this, now I mentioned 18 and 19-year-old kids. That's really what they were back there. There was a 27-year-old captain who had his finger on nuclear war. There was a 27-year-old kid, I'll call him today, that had World War III under his thumb. Of those people, if you haven't done the math, Cuba is 90 miles away. This is a 40-kiloton weapon. A 40-kiloton weapon has a blast range of 350 miles. If we had detonated that nuclear weapon over Cuba, it would have taken out half of South Florida. So these people knew, these soldiers knew that they were operating in harm's way. They knew that if that button was pushed, they're gone.
It's just amazing, but that's the way the Army back then. I guess the motto is, what's the way to explain it? I guess they'd rather have sacrifice South Florida versus 40 planes in the U.S. I guess that was the thinking.
I'll never understand the Army's reasoning for anything, but that was basically it. The destructive power of the weapon was more valuable to the mission than the people who were actively delivering the weapon.
It is an impressive piece of Cold War history, right in the Everglades National Park, right in South Florida. And when I mean Everglades National Park, there's multiple entrances. I mean the main entrance in Homestead, right by Robert is here. You follow the signs of Everglades National Park, stop in the Co-Visitor Center, check in with the ranger there. And then, by the way, I think you'll agree, Richard, pre-register. Call in first because they only allow 20 people for the actual tours. The open house is fine, but I think you'll get maybe 20% of the information you would get with the tour. You agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's hard to find intentionally. I mean, the military didn't want you to know it was there. Yes. So it's a little difficult to find. And when you stop in, as David said, to the Co-Visitor Center, ask them where it's at and they'll give you a little layout on how to get there. It's a couple of twists and turns through the Everglades and you feel like you're driving forever. But remember, it's back there. It's intentionally difficult to get to.
And the good news is it is near Royal Palm, which is already a popular stop because it's really the first and closest major stop for Everglades National Park from the Homestead main entrance. And then from there, you take a ride at the fort and go down a long, long, straight due east road. You think never going to end. And all of a sudden, there's the pink building. I do
Yeah.
recommend to do it the way I did it, is plan your morning correctly, get out in the national park and do your touring. And it is seasonal again, late November to usually late March. This year went a little later. Get there in time to do an open house tour. They want you to check in by about 2:30 for a 3 o'clock tour. Is that correct, Richard?
1:30 for a 2 o'clock.
That's it, for a 2 o'clock tour. And I did show that in the slides here. And what you want to do is really enjoy the open house, drive around everything around. They allow you some time to drive around after the tour, but the guide's waiting to leave. So go to the open house first. Take your time with pictures and everything else. Because during the main tour, most of it is an amazing, knowledgeable park ranger giving you his information, a very well presented tour. And my tour guide is phenomenal. And stay tuned. I'm going to play an interview with Leon and some clips of his tour because he is amazing. I've had a lot of tour guides in my time, and he's fantastic.
Yeah, he really is. Can I take an opportunity for my shameless plug here?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
I do mention the Nike Missile Base in this book that I wrote about my time served in the U.S. Army. It's available on Amazon. All the proceeds go to veterans, and I particularly talk about what it was like to arm a nuclear weapon at 20 years old. So it's kind of an interesting book, and again, the proceeds go to veterans. So it's available on Amazon. My time served in the United States Army. Thank you.
It's a great book. I purchased 2 copies on Amazon when Rich announced it at Toastmasters last year. Whenever you announced it, on Facebook, I bought them. I gave a copy to my dad because his uncle was a World War II veteran. And he loves everything around service. And it's a great book. And I appreciate you coming on and promoting the book. And please purchase the book because it does help out veterans and it does support the cause. And it's more information about the Nike Missile Base in Homestead. Wonderful tour. Next, I do want to transition to my videos, but I do want to shout out some people and some comments in the chat. No questions just yet, but some comments. Bonnie Barnes said she loved the tour and it's free. It is free. That's a good point. It is free. The open house is free, but even the ranger-led tour is free. They do recommend pre-registering. I will say, Richard, during my tour, he accommodated extra people, but sometimes he can't do that. And he said, keep in mind that they don't have the international visitor right now. The park was busy, but not as busy as it could be in the wintertime. So please call and pre-register. I will post a link here, but honestly, just go to Google Everglades National Park, or you can Google HM-69 Nike Missile Base, and it's in your GPS. I'd use my GPS to get there. And it is also follow the visitor center instructions because those are most critical. And please pre-register because you want to make sure you get on that tour because the guided tour to me is the absolute highlight. And the kind of open house kind of builds your excitement for the whole tour.
We call the open house the cliff notes to
Yes.
what they're going to see during the ranger-led tour.
What I do like is that you see that he kind of mentions things during the tour, and I had already seen those. And towards the end, we had somewhere to be. We had to go up to Hollywood to see a friend of mine. So I didn't have to drive around. I just turned around and exited and went on my way and left the park. So to me, it's better off doing the open house first. Sure, can you do them on separate days? Yes, if you get in the open house and you come back for the tour, you can do that too. But I recommend doing them back to back while you're so excited. Because just the amount of time, Richard, they spend at the Beard Visitor Center was impressive. Because that part, you kind of drive by, it's a pink building. And it is just a pink building on the open house because you're a mile away from the Beard Visitor Center, so the Beard Research Center,
right?
For the missiles.
Yeah, I might mention, and you'll remember that the open house is more, as I said, cliff notes of what goes on, and we talk about the weapon and the timing. But sure. David, if you look back at Leon's tour, he puts you in the shoes of the soldiers.
Yes,
he will make you feel like you were one of the soldiers back there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's two different activities.
I also want to shout out to Debbie again, has a great comment. You'll love this, Richard. When we were there, Mom had to explain to her son what a rotary phone worked.
Yeah, I know. I mentioned that rotary phone to people and the kids just scratched their head. They never heard of those.
It's amazing how archaic the technology was, but how important their communication and base was. And generators were big back then, obviously, but man, when you see these machinery inside the open house tour and a little bit during your guided tour, I mean, this radar, which may be the size of a laptop now, it's like the size of a VW bus. I mean, monster equipment.
I tell everybody that you could probably fly that Nike missile with a cell phone today, But
Oh, exactly.
Back then it was these big vacuum tube electronic devices.
It's just amazing. A combat ready. These guys were on alert, guarded, dual fence. Dog kennel was there for German Shepherd trained dogs. Lethal force, the sign you're going to see here to start the tour. Some of the picture we showed was out there. It was a full military site, active until 79, then used for a bit of training after that. Now restored as an amazing piece of Cold War history right here in the main entrance to Everglades National Park in Homestead. You got to check it out. Next up, I want to transition to play a few short video clips, just the kind of highlights of my tour from last weekend, of my open house part of the tour. And then I do have to kind of highlight, cap it all off. I will take a quick break and also go into the interview with Leon Howell, the actual park ranger tour guide who was on the tour and did a phenomenal job. This guy was just amazing. So next up, and Rich is going to stick around to answer questions afterwards. So please put your questions in the chat. And let me get all the banners out. And there's a quick intro clip of me at the, this is now to kind of set the stand. We didn't do anything at the pink building, the Beard Center, except the interview with Leon. That'll be at the end, but that's where you start the tour. I'm actually at the Nike missile site where the missiles were. I'm at the famous sign that says beware to start. And then I do a drive tour in the car around to the famous missile building. So stay tuned for that coming up right now. Greetings from Everglades National Park. I'm at HM-69 Nike missile site here, hidden behind the main road of Everglades National Park, just past the Beard Research Center, not too far past the Poe Visitor Center, something you need to check out that we're talking about on today's show and my guest, Rich Urshik. I was just here the weekend before showing you footage of this place. It is awesome. I've been as far as this gate over here to my right that couldn't get past, and today I'm actually checking out for the first time, inspired by my guest Rich and all his knowledge and his presentation a week or so ago at our Key Largo Chamber of Commerce. It was fantastic, and of course it's restricted. You can't come in here. Actually, you can on certain days in the winter to spring. It's going to end the day of the show. It's ended for the season. Reopens again in November. Usually ends in late March. It's usually a 10 to 2 open house, and then a 2 o'clock tour. You need to call ahead for and reserve a spot. It's max 20 people. You actually meet at the Bird Research Center a mile down the road, which Rich will tell you more about that. But this is an old sign, a relic about what it was like back in the day it was active, from the early 60s to 1979, when it was a active missile site with numerous launch pads of missiles and nuclear warheads to protect our coastline here from the threat that was Cuba. It's amazing for 13 days, Rich, that this actually lasted for so many years. That's the U.S. Army and the military for you. All right, so we're gonna hop in our car and give you guys a quick tour of what's behind us. 3 bunkers, a dog training facility, and a replica warhead. Stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. Okay, we're gonna do a simple drive tour. You can do this during the open house hours from 10 to 2. Again, a seasonal site, mostly because the heat and it's so wide open, from 10 to 2 on weekends, Saturday and Sundays from November, used in March, and this year went to mid-April in 2021. But come back in November. I'm gonna show you the first site on your left is gonna be the dog training facility. The kennel, not dog training too, but the kennel they kept them because the perimeter is protected. This was an active military site with warheads. And then the real highlight here on the left is this bunker that held the warheads. And actually, Rich can clarify what this is. We haven't done the tour yet, we're doing that next. And there is a drawing made by the people that served here. Isn't that pretty cool? Pretty awesome. Only 1 bunker is available to tour, and that's the highlight coming up next, because that has a replica missile, what actually sat here for many years from 63 to 79. And that one you can walk into and walk around, and we'll do that next. But this was all part of the Cuban Missile Crisis, protecting our coastline from the threat of the Russians. So here's the highlight. And there it is. Very cool. And this is all part of your entrance to Everglades National Park. Got a bit of wind here today, but gorgeous day. Keep in mind when you're out here, no restrooms, no water. Bring your own provisions. You can drive here, obviously, so it's easy. And we'll let that couple enjoy as we go over. Rich will tell you all about the history of the armament that's here. I did do a presentation in 2014 where a park ranger was talking about getting an armament here. And this is a section barn C. That is so cool. Rich, they've done a great job with the place. And Rich actually met people who served here. He'll talk about that. Hello, hello.
National Park Nike Hercules missile site.
How are you, sir? What is your name?
My name is Armando Ferrer.
Arm Ferrer.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I'm friends with Rich Urshik, who's going to appear on the show here. I'm going to show this video on. And Rich has been promoting this site a lot in the presentation for Key Largo Chamber of Commerce last week. Great job.
Unfortunately, the only thing is next weekend will be the last weekend that we'll
Yes.
be open until December.
Oh, it's December. Thank you for the clarification. I've been telling people this November, but it's December.
We'll probably start up, well, officially we'll start up around December. It may start a week earlier or so, but so just check with the park and they'll let you know exactly what the dates are. Because we did do some work last year. We started on the weekends before December, and then we started opening up all the 7 days of the week in December. So usually we'll have a weekend or two before that, and then we'll open up weekdays from Monday through Friday.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And I think you guys are probably familiar, this really came about because of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes, yes. Thanks to Rich, we're well versed in the history.
Yep, absolutely. You guys enjoy. Let me know if I can answer any questions for you.
Oh, thank you. You've been great.
Well, good, thank
I'll
you.
leave my mask on because masks are required. This is federal property. Thank you for the background. Your name is
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Armin Ferrer. Armin Ferrer. He's one of the many volunteers here, and that's how I met Rich, because Rich also volunteers here.
Yeah.
And
I've
Rich
talked to him.
Rich actually served on nuclear armaments in his day in the Army. It's crazy. But
We
look
get
at
every once in a while, we get some visitors that actually have served here at the park or had served at some other Nike Hercules missile bases. It's kind of interesting, some of the information and conversations that we have with them.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate anyone who serves, especially Rich. So this is great.
Absolutely.
We're going to check.
This is kind of part of our history. I mean, the closest we've ever to nuclear war
Yeah.
was really the Cuban Missile Crisis.
They have a site in Key Largo where we live, but that's all overgrown nature. You can visit with special permission, but I heard there's not much to see there. You guys,
There are actually 4 sites in South Florida. Upper Key Largo, the one you're mentioning, this one, then what is now the Chrome Detention Center. That used to be a Nike Hercules missile base.
oh, that's right.
And there also used to be one out by Carroll City. So there are actually 4 bases that were built.
That's right, Armando. That's right. Rich had mentioned that the detention center.
Right.
Good use of developed real estate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially since we already paid for it and bought it, you know.
Excellent. Armando, appreciate your time, and
My
you got more
pleasure,
visitors coming. We're going to walk around and get some footage in here.
Do it and enjoy.
Thank you. So this is what the site looked like when it was active use. There was, Rich will describe the details, he's the expert. There was multiple launch pads. They would store the armaments here and then bring them out in the pad, and then they'd always be in use for training, but as Rich will tell you, they didn't actually have to launch one, which is good. Oh, cool, they got a guide now for the Nike missile site. Things have come a long way. I couldn't get past the gate 7 years ago. Very cool. Got things about the armaments in here. You guys got to come check this out. Hey, Rich, your presentation was awesome last week, but the week before last at Key Largo Chamber, but to see it in person is impressive. They've done a wonderful job of restoring old armaments and bringing them here for display. All very safe. There's nothing active here anymore. And then showing pictures of the guys serving and how they manage the base. I mean, there was a team here serving here for our national defense, as there are teams around the country right now at different bases. Wow, I could spend hours in here, which I won't do right now, but a missile body canister, HM-69. We'll show you that in a second. You can get up close and personal in here. So this is the one of the 3 hangars that's available for viewing. The other 2 are just storage for the Park Service. The outside buildings are restored a bit just to make sure that they're easy to look at. But this is mostly a drive around tour, but this is the main part of your tour right now. Check out that hatch. Oh, here's a great banner. Wow, that's awesome. Thanks to the generous support from the South Florida National Park Trust, the U.S. Army Center of Military History, and the Nike Historical Society, the Everglades Association, Redland Company, Hamburg Enterprises, and the George T. Baker Aviation School. Great job, guys, bringing this here. This really makes this a real treasure of history to come visit. Unbelievable. There's a few more maps to our right. I don't want to bother the people here talking to the guide and some recording equipment. I do want to check out these over here that were part of. This was also a radar site because they had to see the planes coming. And then these were all tracked by triangular radar, which Rich is going to explain on the show. And here's some of the equipment they used that was in the Beard Center, which is the pink building out front that we're going to show in a minute when we meet Leon. Buttons still work. So this is a launch control indicator, LCI. And these were in the big bunker of the Beard, that's now the Beard Research Center. And that was always farther away so they could triangulate the radar. And they could know the planes were coming. These were anti-aircraft missiles, and then fire the missiles at them. So this is our just brief preview of the Nike Missile Center. Again, I came here many years ago, didn't get to see that much. Now, I want to come back a lot and see it again, spend more time here. I recommend you guys too. Let's get back to the show. Welcome back live here with Richard Urshick, Nike base volunteer and veteran Army sergeant. We just completed a video tour I did last weekend of the Nike missile base, HM-69 in Everglades National Park. That was the open house part of the tour. And it's volunteers like Rich that make that happen. As Rich mentioned earlier in the show, they are looking for more volunteers for next season. So, Rich, what'd you think of the video?
I think it was great. You did you should be a volunteer out there.
I know. I love it.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Thank you. And I must say, that is the highlight, the warhead. But you get to see the whole grounds. You get to drive around the whole triangular loop as you saw in the pictures earlier in the show. If you're just joining now, at the end of the show, it becomes a recording wherever you're watching it. Watch the whole thing from the beginning and check out the slides we talked about in the history of the space because it's very amazing. And that is the missile assembly building. I didn't know at the time during the when I drove by it, I kind of forgot what it was. But that is the main hangar. There was 3 of those hangars, and you can spend as much time as you want with that on the open house. They do allow you in there on your own time on the guided tour, but really the guide has already built your knowledge and vision going into that. So I really liked your role out there because if you had a question, there was several volunteers around. I was very impressed.
Yeah, there's generally 2 on the base at a time. And we've had as many as 200 visitors in the 4-hour span out there. So we've actually conducted mini presentations to 25 or 30 people at a time. And we just went through the step-by-step process of why it was there, what it did, how it worked, and why we did that.
And remind people again, so when are the seasons for this tours and when's the open house versus the actual guided tours?
It's actually November through April. I know Armand said December. It's actually November. Yeah. First week in November. The volunteers show up a week early to clean the missile up because as you mentioned, David, that thing looks like it could be fired today. Yes. It's very clean. It's all oiled. It's all ready to go as if we were still using them. But naturally, it's just a replica or it looks like it could be fired, but it can't. So from November to April every year, open house from 10 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, and a ranger-led tour that starts at 2 o'clock until 3 o'clock. And hopefully by next year, we won't be social distancing and we won't be wearing masks, and there'll be no limit to the number of people that can go through the ranger-led tour. This year, the limit was 20.
Yes, 20.
We've seen as many as 100.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. 20 was plenty. And as you saw the pictures I showed before, I had pictures of our group and everyone was spaced out and Leon did a great job. Next up, I do want to show you an exclusive interview with Leon Howell. He gave me some time before our tour and wait to hear this guy speak. He just oozes history. And this guy is an amazing tour guide. And I highly recommend checking him out and doing the open house and then doing the tour with Leon come next season. So coming up next is a short interview before we close out the show with Leon Howell, my park ranger tour guide at HM-69 Nike Missile Base in Everglades National Park. So I'm here with Leon Howell.
Yes, sir.
You're part of the Park Service?
Yes, sir. Seasonal ranger.
And he is our guide today here at the Nike Missile Site, Everglades National Park. I am here, David Hartman, going on the tour with Leon. We checked in before at the Poe Visitor Center. And now we're here, so Poe Visitor Center, thank you very much. And we're now here early at 1:30 for a 2 o'clock tour. And so Leon, how'd you get involved in touring this site? How'd you get involved with the Park Service?
Well, I'm retired military. I was a fishing guide for a while, and I was fortunate enough to be hired by the Park Service as a seasonal ranger back in 2005. I'm a science and nature nut. This is my backyard. I'm a South Florida guy. We didn't start this tour until 2009, so I was here when we started it. I was pretty much a science and nature guy, and at first I thought, you know, missiles, I don't know, but the minute I heard about it and thought about it and realized it was my generation, my time, and I was military, I jumped on it. It became one of our most popular programs.
Well, I gotta say, I'm going on the tour now, but I did the open house.
Yes, sir.
Last time I came back here in 2013-14, I couldn't get past the gate. It wasn't clear when to go there. It is awesome. I can't wait to hear the more detail. And again, my friend Rich Urshik, who's on my show today, told us a little bit about it virtually, but to see it in person, you get chills. It's impressive.
Well, we're going to give you the whole story today, at least as much of it as we know and can do in an hour and a half. It's a big story, certainly the story of the Cuban Missile Crisis, why this base is even here to begin with, and how the mission here and the life here was different than all of the other almost 300 Nike batteries throughout the country.
Really?
Different story down here. Yes, sir.
That is awesome. And then what is that building behind you? What's this pink building?
That's our research center. That was the headquarters to the Nike base.
And this is where the men stayed?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we look forward to hearing more about it here at Everglades National Park. I'm David Hartman, your host today. But our guide is Leon Howell.
And I'm glad y'all are here.
Hey, I appreciate you having us come along and tagging along. And how long have you been in the Park Service?
I've been in the Park Service for 15 years, but I've been poking around in this park, fairly serious student of the place for about 36 years.
That is awesome. We appreciate your service. We look forward to today's tour.
My pleasure.
Leon's the man. Amazing guy. And trust me, when he said that was before our tour, Richard, he said, we'll give you the full story. He gives you the full story. We spent a half hour alone at the pink building behind him, the Bear Research Center, and we were not bored. We were just listening to everything he had to say because he really went into the men, the service, their lifestyles. And he had, I mean, the preparation by these rangers, the pictures he had, where to go, where to point. I'm like, this is a well-organized tour, and this is an excellent tour guide, and it's free.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. I enjoy and respect him. We're about the same age, so we remember the same things from the same time. So there's a lot of things that he and I compared notes on, and yeah, he's the guy. He gives a great tour.
Highly recommend checking out Leon Howell and other park ranger tour guides next season, starting in early November at Everglades National Park, Homestead main entrance in the Florida Everglades here in South Florida. It's the HM-69 Nike Missile Base Tour. Definitely go there early enough to do the open house first. First off, stop at Co-Visitor Center, which is before the park actual security gate to buy your ticket. Go there, check in with the Rangers, and pre-register for the tour before you even go. Make sure you get a spot because it could be limited next year. We don't know. And then do the open house, and then meet Leon or the park ranger for the day at 1:30 for a 2 o'clock tour, and you will enjoy it and share it with others because it's an amazing, amazing experience.
David, I should mention that while the tour is free, there's an entrance fee to get into the park.
Yes,
but
there
if
is.
you're
Thank
a veteran, you get in for free. Make sure you bring your veteran credentials and you get into the park for free.
Yes, veterans, and they have retired passes now, lifetime passes you can get if you're retired. There are numerous discounts available for the national parks. And I do recommend getting an annual pass to hit every national park because we have two here in Florida, Biscayne National Park and Everglades National Park, right next to each other. One last question out there that was out there, it was actually sent to me before the show, was how many Nike missile bases were there nationwide at its peak?
265 is the number.
Wow. And the one HM-69 was one of the last serving ones.
Yeah, until 1979. And one of the things Leon mentioned, that this one was different than all the other ones. This one here in Everglades National Park and the one in Alaska, that's 2 of the 265, are the only ones that are above ground. All the other Nike missile bases are in the ground, and the missiles were fired out of silos. Here, they're above ground for the obvious reason.
Oh, yes.
3 feet under your feet is water, so
Yes.
the water table prohibited the silos.
Water and coral.
Yeah.
Richard, great to have you on today. I did put the link here for the Nike missile base. They have their own website inside the Everglades National Park website, which is nps.gov/Everglades, remember, or just Google HM-69 Nike missile base, and it does come up first in Google. And definitely check it out. Starting next season, mid-November, Rich will be out there as you volunteer. I may be volunteering out there. I'm so excited about this piece of history right here in my backyard, right here in South Florida. Please do check it out. And Richard, again, thank you for coming on. Please, before you go, plug your book again, because what you're doing, I think, is an amazing thing.
Thank you. Again, My Time Served in the United States Army.
Yes.
It's available on Amazon. All proceeds go to veterans. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Richard, thanks for having you on, and enjoy your time in your new home of Fort Myers.
Thanks, buddy.
Have a good night. Rich has become a very good friend, and his passion for whatever he does is amazing. And I've learned a lot from him in Toastmasters, and do check out his book. Excellent. Guys, thanks for being on today. We are wrapping up today's show about HM-69, the Nike missile base in the Florida Everglades National Park, right here in South Florida, in the Homestead entrance to the national park. As always, when you see this show, if you missed the beginning, we're going to go to a recording right after, wherever social media you're on, YouTube or Facebook. Rewind that and watch the whole thing in the beginning, because we cover some amazing history, pictures, and slides that you're going to want to see. And we're going to build your vision on why this tour is worth it, to go out there for a full half day, around midday, do the open house, check in at 1:30, and do the tour at 2 o'clock with Leon Howell or someone else. It really is an amazing tour. And pre-register. Again, it's seasonal because it gets too hot in the Everglades for the summertime, and they do slow down up there. Pre-register come next November. Call the day before. I called a few days before. It is free, but there is a park fee for Everglades National Park, or you could be an annual pass holder, or you're free if you're a veteran. So keep that in mind. Thank you all for joining today. Appreciate the comments. And next week, we'll be here again, home office in Key Largo, Florida, special Earth Day show. Going to do something a little different next week, and look forward to having you guys on for that show. And as always, please like this and share it, and leave a comment if you watch the recording. I do go back and rewatch the show and pay attention to all comments there. Any questions for Rich or I'll pass along to Rich, and Rich will be following the post too. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week on the show, Sunday at 5 o'clock, here live from Key Largo, Florida. Have a great Sunday, everybody.